today we'll talk how to start the research work, and this session would be very useful for all those who are starting up their research work. So let me define the few steps which we are going to discuss in this session, that how we can identify the research area, how we can conduct the literature review, and then on the basis of the literature review, how we define the research questions or the problem, and then we will talk about that how we can set the objectives, and after that, how we can choose the right methodology. After that, we will talk about that how we can plan and conduct the experiment or the simulation, and on the basis of the results which we get, then we will talk about how we can analyze that results, and how we can interpret that data. And once we do that, then we will talk about that how we can write a good thesis or research papers, and what are the key steps involved over there, and then how we can present that research work at some conference or at seminar, etc. So let me talk about that the first thing or the first step, very important aspects that we can ensure, that is the research area. So research area basically that that depends on your interest and expertise. If you are experimentalist, then you can go for the experiment, and if you are good enough in computational skills, then of course you can go for the simulations, and that could involve even console simulation or the DFT. And when we are talking about the experiment, you can talk about you can conduct the experiment as per your expertise. But now in this session, we are more specific to the application with reference to the physics, right? So, for example, in physics, then we can the experimentalist could have the expertise or the interest. That could be that how we can enhance the dye degradations while using cobalt doped nickel oxide nanoparticles, and maybe your interest or expertise could be using the plasmonic nanomaterial to boost the photocatalytic efficiency, or if you are just working on energy harvesting application, you may simulate the charge transfer mechanism that could be used in supercapacitor applications. So research area, it means that we have to have decide on the basis of our research and the expertise. The very next step, which is very important in research, that is the literature review. And in literature review, three important questions which we have to get the answer is. The first one is what is already known and what gap exists in that fields which you have chosen. And the third most important is what are the latest advancement so far is achieved and in that particular area of the research. And while using that literature review, that we have to have use the various tools to go for the literature review, and those tools for the literature review may include Google Scholar, Science Direct, Scopus, or Web of Science for searching the various research journals or research papers, basically. And even we can use the ResearchGate or academia.edu for the networking with other researchers. And as we are conducting the literature review, that extensively actually involves the citation and the reference to be used. So we properly need a reference management system or the software. So for that, most commonly used that could be Refer, Zeterio, or Mendeley. So you can use whatever is available at your ease. So the very next step is that on the basis of that literature review, we have to have actually sort out the research problem. Maybe in the context of the physics, so the research question could be how does cobalt nickel oxide improve photocatalytic efficiency under visible light. So on the basis of that research questions that we have to set the clear objective, and that objective could be that synthesizing and characterizing cobalt doped nickel oxide nanoparticle. And on the basis of that, once we synthesize it, of course, the next step is that we have to evaluate its photocatalytic efficiency against any dye, or we can use the wastewater wastewater to actually degrade or to clean it against that synthesized photocatalyst which we are talking about over here. The next very important step is that we have to choose the right methodology. In right methodology, when I'm talking about, so it means that either if you are experimentalist or you are talking about the computational techniques that, for example, if we go for the experiment, then we, of course, when we are talking about the synthesis method, we have to be very clear about that either it would be chemical method or it's a green method. In chemical method, we can talk about the sol gel method, hydrothermal, maybe co-precipitations, and after that we have to talk about the characterization tools which we can use, that could be XRD, SEM, TEM, UV visible, PL, XPS, and Raman. And of course, in parallel to that experiment, we can also conduct the computational experiments. And in simulation or the computation, we can use the COMSOL of the D or the DFT. Maybe in this particular context, we can use the COMSOL for simulating optical and electronic properties of that synthesized material. And the very next step is that now we have to plan and conduct the experiment or the simulation for that particular defined material. And when we are talking about that synthesis of the material, that we have to optimize the various lab parameter, maybe the doping concentrations or its calcination temperature, and the other even when we are talking about the doping concentration, we have to have good enough knowledge about molarity, and molarity we'll talk about later on at some later stage, inshallah. Then, of course, we have to test that photocatalytic activity for the degradation of maybe that as a model pollutant like methylene blue under UV visible light. And then, of course, we can use the COMSOL simulation to model the reaction kinematics or plasmonic enhancement effect. And the very next step is that on the basis of the results which we could get it from the experiment and simulation, important thing is that we have to compare the results with the previous studies, and then we have to use the various statistical tools, maybe that is Origin, MATLAB, Python for data analysis. Most important aspect which really I want to emphasize over here is when we are analyzing and interpreting the data, don't forget it to actually to address the third most important aspect, that is identify trends and anomalies and the mechanism. As long as you can properly identify the trends and anomalies, that would be the success, and that is what is the research is all about, right? And once you do it, then of course the next second last step is writing a research paper or the thesis, and when we'll talk about later on in much more detail how to write the research paper. But of course that research paper would include abstract, introductions, method, results, discussions, and conclusions. And then once you write the paper, then you have to choose the proper journal to submit that. And once you submit your research paper or manuscript in the journal, of course you will get the revision from the journal, and you have to respond to the reviewer comments before final publication. And once you do it, of course the last important step is that we have to present that this work at some conferences or the seminar. So this would help to collaborate with researcher for interdisciplinary studies.